Hey everyone, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We're going to talk about Omar Khan's extension, but as well as how Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth could really open up the passing game for the Steelers as a pair of tight ends with the other players already on the roster. That and more of your questions here answered on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. More on them later. All right, Steelers fans. Before we get into questions, because we still are piling up new ones every single day, we got to talk about the big news that did happen, and that was the extension of Steelers GM Omar Khan signing I believe it was a 3-year extension, keeping him with the team through at least the 2027 season. That is actually no, extension runs through the 2028 season. Excuse me. But looking at that, what does this mean? You know, them getting this done. I think if anything, it means that the organization feels, and I guess the Rooneys feel, that Omar Khan is doing things the right way. He's putting the building blocks in place, and it makes a lot of sense. Omar Khan's been a guy that's been with the organization for 25-ish years now. I think he came into the organization as an analyst under Kevin Colbert and worked his way up the organization to the GM position. But this is a guy who I think has embraced the rebuild that they're going for. He has, where he is a numbers guy and he is a market guy. He understands the values of what's going on in the NFL. He's not the raw scout that Kevin Colbert was, as far as being able to just assess football talent straight up. But that's why he hires guys to do that. And I think that what he's doing is indicative of that the Steelers are trying to do things the right way, and he's making aggressive moves, as we talked about, without mortgaging the Steelers' future. And I think those have been. I think that's what this deal reflects, is that the Rooneys are respecting how he has created so much turnover in year after year while the Steelers have stayed afloat, and at the same time they have not lost their future chances at getting a franchise quarterback in this upcoming draft. They haven't mortgaged the future as far as their salary cap. They have a lot of space and a lot of opportunity to grow into something even better. So I think this move just says, hey, they like what Omar Khan's building. They want to see him, let him see it through this upcoming draft class with a quarterback, and then give him some years on top of that to be able to figure out what he wants to do, how to build around the quarterback that they draft and keep things moving forward. So that being said, I think a big part of it are the weapons that they have in the offense. And the latest addition to those weapons was Jonnu Smith. And a lot of people have been asking, hey, what about Jonnu Smith? Like, how does he work into it? Now, we've talked into this briefly with Alan Saunders and Nick Farabaugh, but wanted to get to one of you guys' question. As always, you can call in with your questions at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. We try to get the question back to as soon as possible. But this question, I thought, opened up some things that I was able to kind of dive into when I started looking at where these guys made the biggest impact in the receiving game. Take it away, Zach Smith from North Carolina.
Hey, Chris, Zach Smith out of North Carolina. Just calling in after the Jonnu Smith and Jalen Ramsey trade, and I was curious what your thoughts are as how we're going to work in Jonnu Smith, with Pat Freiermuth, or will he start over Freiermuth, and what this will do to the offense moving forward. Love the show. Thanks.
Thank you for your question, Zach. As always, you can call in at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. No, that was not Smitty, our guy that runs the afternoon drive podcast with Alan Saunders. That was a whole different Zach Smith, but still a Steelers fan nonetheless. All right, but let's get into it. Your question here is about Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith. I think Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith could provide unique opportunities to get open at the intermediate level. And what I mean by that is, when I look at the numbers that they were able to produce at efficiency-wise, that's where both of them excelled, and it could open up opportunities for everyone else. So let's look at the numbers that I'm talking about here. When you look at the intermediate level, which I call it intermediate level, for like 10 to 19 yards. So past the normal first down marker, but not 20 yards where it officially starts to qualify as a deep pass. He Jonnu Smith with the Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa that at that point made six or 5 out of 6 contested catches over the, when he in that medium range, and had no lower than the pass rating of 118.8 when he was targeted at the intermediate range, and that was over the middle part of the field. So he made a lot of plays. He was 11 of 13 when targeted in the intermediate middle part of the field. He also was pretty good on the sidelines in the intermediate part of the field. And when I look at that, and then I look at how Pat Freiermuth, a lot of his best numbers came from that area as well. I think there's some chances for some real mix-ups with these two, where they're going to catch either slot corners or extra safeties or linebackers in some bad mismatches where they're not going to be able to run with those guys, to the point where they're going to be able to get open, and Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to see that and connect with these guys for solid throws, solid gains, and keep the chains moving at times. But the other thing is that because these guys are both tall, big guys, Jonnu Smith, is 6'3", 248. Pat Freiermuth, 6'5", 258. So these guys, Jonnu Smith may not be as tall as Freiermuth, but he's thick, he's strong, and he can move really well. Both players can move really well. I think those factors are going to make it tough for defenses to take them away consistently. And even when they do, it's going to take some extra resources to do so. But here's the thing: you're taking away those guys. Guess where DK Metcalf's going to hurt you? That he's going to hurt you with that deep ball, where he caught 50% of passes that were thrown when they were thrown to him when they traveled 20 yards or more in the air, and all 5 of his touchdowns came on deep balls last year. I look at that, and I have to think that the Steelers are going to find a way to use that to their advantage when trying to use 2 intermediate receiving tight ends that are good at making plays at the intermediate level, a deep threat that's dangerous at all times with his size and speed like DK Metcalf. But again, I think where this all really works together really well is that the guys that you're waiting to see if they can be number 2 and number 3 wide receivers, and Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson, their best game is their speed. They're going to be quick. They're going to be fast. And with all this attention that teams are going to have to play to the tight ends and to DK Metcalf and everything else, they're going to be afterthoughts. And with their speed, when you let a speedy guy be an afterthought, those guys will hurt you, because when they get the ball in open space and they hit a seam, that's what leads to big plays. And I think horizontal speed is what's going to be huge. When I say horizontal speed, I just mean going from sideline to sideline, like running a shallow cross where, if you're Calvin Austin, you run a shallow cross and, there's a defender coming behind you, but by the time you catch it, you're already in full stride. So you just hit your jets, and then that defender who's behind you can't catch you. That's where I think the Steelers could mix up a lot of things here, is that if they're hitting Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith with intermediate passes, whether that's over the middle or on the sidelines, and then DK Metcalf is your deep threat, and then you have the smaller, faster guys working underneath all that, I think that is a well-layered plan of attack for the Steelers to kind of expect for this season. And if Aaron Rodgers is still the cerebral quarterback that I've seen for pretty much his entire career, that's something that they can take advantage of for big plays. So good question there, Zach. I think that there's certainly things that Jonnu Smith's going to be able to bring to the table, but it's going to be, again, being part of a bigger picture. It's not going to be like, oh, he's coming in and that's that, and that he's just the star of the offense. No, he is part of a bigger picture. And I think, again, it's a good sign for the Steelers that they're getting more and more guys that understand, hey, I'm not coming here to change the culture. Jalen Ramsey's introductory video said that. Aaron Rodgers said he wants to be a servant leader. There's guys understanding their roles in this team. And I think that's a good thing. Now when they create the culture and they create the culture of winning, they can all build together and they can find that confidence together. And that stuff does matter in the long run. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we got plenty more of your questions to address. And I know yesterday we had a TJ Watt question that flamed up the comment section. I want to give you another TJ Watt question that's going to, I think, temper things down just to show there's a fair side to Steelers fans and a lot of this stuff. We'll do that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Gametime. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concerts tickets faster and easier than ever before. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endless scrolling and trying to find the best deal? Gametime Zone Deals pick the best seats in your section for you. Ever wonder what your view will actually look like before you buy? Well, the Gametime app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there are no surprises. And if you're worried about what happens when plans change, the Gametime guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and much more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our episode here. We're going to start taking more of your calls here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Again, if you ever have a question, call in at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. We'll try to get your questions on the show as soon as we can. There's a lot of questions that have been piling up. And yesterday, there was one that kind of lit people on fire a little bit. And it was one that I addressed pretty sternly, I thought. But the question as far as TJ Watt and his questioning his loyalty to the team because he wants money, and I pretty much shot that down. I was like, absolutely not. TJ Watt wants to get paid just like everybody wants to get paid. And I was proud to see a lot of the comment section agreed there and understood why the TJ Watt is not a bad person because he's doing this right now. I think that they're trying to figure out their negotiations. That's coming to that. But I wanted to show that there are plenty of Steelers fans who don't think the way that caller did and think that, oh, he's betraying the team or whatever, and this isn't the right way to do this. There are people who appreciate what's actually going on, and I want Monk from Memphis, Tennessee, to show you where he's at in this.
Hey, Chris. My name is Monk from Memphis, Tennessee. I'm an avid Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Born and raised black and gold. And all I want to know is, why won't Pittsburgh move forward to pay TJ Watt? That is our heart and soul. And whenever I can get a chance to talk to you on the show, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Monk. As always, you can call in like Monk did at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. I do think that the Steelers want to make it happen, Monk. I think that they made an offer, which you probably haven't seen come to the table. I think TJ Watt was kind of okay with dragging this out a little bit, taking it to training camp. Again, I think he wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to just not come to OTAs, not come to mini camp, be with his newborn kid, be a good dad, and then, come to training camp when he has to. And I think it's going to be interesting because the Steelers typically, historically, they don't negotiate with players who aren't in training camp. Again, when compared to Franco Harris held out once, and Chuck Noll said, Franco who? And then, sometime later, he was a Seahawk. So I don't think TJ Watt is anything in that situation. I think that this is going to work out. I think that he's going to be the guy for the Steelers for the next 3-4 years. But I get asking the question. I get, I get feeling like nervous about these things, but the Steelers, they value TJ Watt. That's why they're saying, hey, we're going to protect this guy and we're going to sign him long term. I'm pretty sure what's happened right now is there's an offer in place. TJ Watt has seen it. He's probably going to come to the table, maybe make some other demands to get a few other things, and then once that works, then he'll be signed. This will be forgotten, and then by the start of the season, he'll be working with this defense, and I think that's a good thing. But good questions, Monk. And again, I just wanted to show Monk's side of things because he's a Steelers fan. Yesterday when Paul was talking, people were like, "Oh man, Steelers fans have really turned on TJ Watt." It's not all of them. It's not all of them. In fact, I think there's a good bit of them that are still not in the camp of, oh, TJ's washed, get rid of him or anything like that. I think the large majority of Steelers fans are like, no, we get it. We understand what's going on here. So wanted to show that there were other fans that weren't like the one that was, that kind of painted TJ Watt in a very unfavorable light yesterday. But with that being said, I do think that TJ Watt goes back into the, being around and being available sooner rather than later. I do think that goes back into what we've been talking about as far as yesterday's episode, talking about how the Steelers defense could really benefit from a Jalen Ramsey type at cornerback, because if he's pressing, he's making things harder for guys to get off the line of scrimmage. You're going to want to throw the ball as quick. And if you're not throwing the ball as quick, you're holding onto the ball. And if you're holding onto the ball, TJ Watt's going to come and find you, or he's going to force you to move. And if you're not moving at the great, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So I think that this is an opportunity here. And there was a question along those lines from Greg in Boca Raton, Florida. Greg, take it away.
Hey, Chris, this is Greg Cairo from Boca Raton, Florida. Love your show. Listen to you every day on the way to work. I think what the Steelers are doing on defense is they're loading up on the defensive line with Harmon and Black to stop the Derrick Henrys and the Saquon Barkleys of the world. I think between that front seven is going to be jailbreak city. I think it's going to be a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks. They're not going to have a lot of time to get deep balls out. So I don't know that they're that concerned about the deep ball with the safety issue that we're talking about, losing Minka. And they may add another safety, so that would solve that problem too, probably. And then I think having three dominant corners between Slay, Ramsey, and Porter is going to protect against the, Minnesota Vikings of the world, who they play early in the season, and the Cincinnati Bengals, they play twice. Kansas City Chiefs, might be playoffs. So I think that's what they're doing. I think they're going to have an answer for everybody defensively, and I think it'll play into our favor. I think it was a good trade. We had Jonnu Smith, who has worked with Arthur Smith before, and he knows how to use him effectively, and he's a good player, very good player, in fact. So I think that's the plan there, and I think it's a good one. I kind of like it. So keep up the great work. Love your show, and like I said, listen to you every day, brother. See you, man.
Thank you, Greg, for your call. As always, you can call in like Greg, 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. So let's dive into the several parts of your question here, Greg. One, I do think this pass rush has a potential, but I think there's a few things it hinges on for this defense to take the step forward that I think that you're envisioning, which means like stepping up into that elite category again. They've been in the very good category for the past few years. They've been a top 10 defense, but they haven't been top 5 since I think 2019 and 2020 were the last two. They had back-to-back top 5 years. I think there's a potential to be dangerous with that, in that manner. But I also think that there's potential to do other things as well. And I think, again, the key for this year is building up the talent, the young talent, so they can be ready to kind of get things going for next year. But when it comes to pressure and what they're trying to do on defense, the first thing you still got to do is stuff the run. If Derek Harmon and Y.A. Black and Cam, if the stuff in the run is an easier thing this year, it's going to make coverage so much more fun to watch, because I think now with the cornerbacks that they've added, they're trusting these guys. They're going to be able to trust these guys to live on islands and say, hey, you know what? We're going to throw an exotic blitz at these guys because they're not going to see it coming, and we can cover we can trust our corners to hold up in coverage long enough just for that blitz to get there. And so that's where I do think there could be some really interesting schematics thrown in if the Steelers are so inclined to use stuff like that. So I do think that there's help coming, but I think that right now the Steelers defense, if they can stuff the run, if the cornerbacks work out the way they're supposed to, and the pass rush is bringing it from all these different angles and using TJ Watt, I think that it could be a really big year across the board for the Steelers when it comes to that pass rush, and especially with it working well with the cornerback situation now with Jalen Ramsey. So we'll have plenty of more things to discuss in the next segment here. More calls from you guys here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, including a potential trade option one that people have been exploring, I guess, on their own time. I want to address that and another question here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We're right back. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here today on Friday. Also, happy 4th of July. I forgot to say at the top of the show. That's my bad. Happy 4th of July. I hope that you guys are eating some good cookout food today, getting on a grill if you got time. And I hope that you're enjoying some time with friends and family and loved ones. So happy 4th of July, everybody. Hope that you're going to be able to get your relax on in this for this holiday weekend. But with that being said, let's get to more questions here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. As always, 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from, keep your question under a minute. This next question, I think, is interesting because a lot of people are waiting for the next shoe to drop when it comes to the Steelers, and that's the wide receiver position. And what are they going to do there? Ali called in to ask that question or a similar question to that and offered a solution for the Steelers. So, Ali from Big Spring, Texas, take it away.
Hey, Chris, this is Ali the Reaper from Big Spring, Texas. I've been following your show for a few years now, and I'm a big fan. I just left you a comment just a few seconds ago. All right, neither here nor there. My question pertains to the wide receiver room. What do you say about contacting Green Bay, maybe offering a third or a fourth round draft pick for next year for Romeo Doubs? I honestly think he will be a great wide receiver too under Aaron Rodgers and maybe help benefit this offense moving forward. Let me know what you think. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Appreciate it as always when you guys call in. Again, the number is 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. This one coming from Ali in Big Spring, Texas. Ali, I don't think the Steelers should give up a third or a fourth for Romeo Doubs. Straight up, I just don't think that makes a lot of sense for them right now. His numbers are solid. I think he'd be a solid depth player addition. But if you're looking for someone who's going to be a serious contributor and you're giving up early day 3 capital, late day 2 capital, those are picks that you're going to need to either help replenish the ranks of your next draft class if you've traded up and gotten your franchise quarterback, or the actual picks themselves that are traded in order to go up and get their quarterback. And so I don't think the Steelers are in the market for a Romeo Doubs unless like, the Packers are giving him away. And I think that maybe they'd entertain that. But right now, I think the biggest thing for the Steelers is they are trying to focus on just getting better, developing things, and they need to develop units. They need to develop the O-line to be this really dominant force so that over the next several years, they'll be able to keep them together and they will become more and more reliable with each passing week and then each passing year. So that being said, I don't think that Doubs is the answer. If the Steelers didn't go trade for Jalen Ramsey and didn't use real draft compensation in that, then I think that they'll be fine in this situation. So I don't think that Doubs is worth a third or a fourth round pick. I think that's a move that you make for a bit higher of a player than Doubs, but I think that he'd be a solid addition if he was just cut. I think that there would be something there. There's my phone trying to read what I'm saying when I'm just trying to work here. But I do think that again, Doubs would be nice, but not for a third or a fourth. If anything, you're getting him for a 6th or a 7th. Because again, he's a guy that's on his rookie deal. He's on his 4th year of his deal. So this is a 1-year rental. You're talking about a 7th. You might even be talking about an exchange of picks. Like you're giving up a 2027 6th and getting a 2027 7th, like something along those lines. But no, I'm not trading for Romeo Doubs. Now, again, the Steelers should be in the trade market. They should be have their eyes open when it comes to the wide receiver position and other positions. But right now, Romeo Doubs, not the guy. I know he has a history with Rodgers, but that's not enough in my book. I think that they need to be making serious additions there, and that's something that we'll take more looks at moving forward when it comes to some of these other questions. All right, so we got that question out of the way. This last question, I typically don't take instructional questions that are more like procedural questions, but I sometimes make an exception just to help someone who might be confused about something, and also help people that just aren't as inclined about certain bits of information. And this person is asking a schedule making question that I thought was interesting. And it was like, okay, we can use this to educate some people who might not be aware that there is a system in place, because the question kind of is about strength of schedule and how that works out. So I'll just let Sullivan from Los Angeles explain this way. Sullivan, take it away.
Hi, Chris. This is Sullivan Lennon from Los Angeles, California. And the question I have for you is the strength of the schedule. Last year we had a really tough schedule with a lot of good teams, a lot over 500 teams. I'd like to know from your point of view, how do the league set the schedule for the different teams as far as the strength, the weakness, and the strength of the teams for their scheduling? And do you think that this year's schedule for 2025 is a little easier a road to go to the playoffs in? Love your show. Thank you, Chris. Have a good day.
Thank you, Sullivan. As always, you can call in like Sullivan did at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep a question under a minute. So let's go through the Steelers' schedule real quick to help you understand. There is a system to every opponent every year. Like, even with the newly added game at the end of the season, there's a way to calculate for it. You'll always play 6 divisional games, because all divisions are 4 teams large, and or 14 large, so you get 3 opponents. You play each opponent twice, so you get 6 divisional games off the rip. That's part of what you got to deal there. And then what happens? But that's every year. And then each year, each division is paired with another division in the AFC and another division with the NFC, where all 4 teams in each of the divisions will play against each other throughout the season. So there's definitely some changes here and there that come with that. I think that's something that that's going to be interesting to watch as the season unfolds, with who is actually a good team when you talk about who's ranks where, and what's a good game, what's a bad game. But the thing is with this, you get your 6 divisional games. That's 6 games right there. You get 4 games against a conference in the AFC, 4 games against a conference in the NFC. So that's 8 games plus what you had your 6 divisions. So now you're talking about 14 games. So now you have 3 more games left. And so what happens is you play your last 3 games, you play against 2 AFC divisions that you're not locked up against, which are your division and the division that you're playing in the whole this year. So, like, for example, this year the Steelers are playing all of the AFC East. So that means when it comes to the AFC South and the AFC West, instead of playing their whole division, they play the teams that ranked in the same spot as the Steelers the year before, so that it's trying to even out and make things fairer. So that's where I think the Steelers, that's where the NFL kind of makes it's formulaic when it comes to these teams. And that's why people know as soon as the end of the season, as soon as the season's done, that's when you kind of see, okay, teams know, where the weaknesses are, where everything's at. But again, things can change. You never know, because people could, teams could get really good, teams could get really bad, and that changes things. And I think I also reflect that in a lot of my reviews of things. So, but yeah, there's a formula to it every year. The thing is just that the Steelers, they're part of them being good enough, every year to make the playoffs, or at least on the cusp of it. They rarely get the worst opponents, and I think that that's something that can work against the Steelers if you think so. But I think it's just another sign of hey, no matter what happens, the Steelers are going to find a way to get to the playoffs or be right in that contention even with this. And to answer your last part of your question, is this an easier schedule than last year? It's tough to say if it's easier. I will say that end of season gauntlet doesn't look as daunting. It's still a bit daunting, I think, because they get the Ravens twice in their last 5 games of the regular season. But you also have the Dolphins coming to Pittsburgh. You also have the Browns in Cleveland. Granted, they haven't won there in quite some time. And you also have at the Lions. That's a tough one. So, I mean, they do have some tough games down the stretch, but not in the way that they had it before. And I think that's just the thing is they got to give themselves time to recover when they get to the ending part of the season. And that's where I think it's going to be interesting to see how they hold up in the schedule with that. But they need to be healthy to get there. We'll be continuing to cover these Steelers as they go through the offseason. Again, I'm your host, Chris Carter. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, social media. Every social media is the same handle everywhere at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. You can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers. Back here tomorrow with another Locked On Steelers. Back here Monday, not tomorrow, Monday. Back here Monday with another episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast.